Welcome back to another episode of Talent Talks. I'm JC. I'm the COO of More Staffing. Today, we're tackling a crucial topic for remote teams: performance reviews. Giving feedback is one thing, but turning that feedback into a real growth is a bigger goal, especially in a virtual setup. To help us unpack this, I'm joined by two experts from More Staffing, Kitty Parco and Jo Rayos. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, JC. You're excited to be here for the third time.
This is my second time.
Kitty, Director of Talent Acquisition at More Staffing. So, as I always say, my role goes beyond just managing the team. I also bridge the gap between sales and recruiting. I also drive initiatives to boost client and talent engagement. I work hand in hand with Joe to develop recruiting strategies as well as you, of course. And then we support the entire recruitment team, making sure that we're filling the right talents, or we're deploying the right talents to our clients. So at the core of it all, I would say that my focus is making sure that both our clients and our talents thrive in a remote work environment. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you for sharing, Jo.
So yeah, my name is Jo. I'm the recruitment manager here at More Staffing. I'm here to support the team in terms of the recruitment needs that we have and making sure that all of our clients are able to meet the best fit talent for their roles.
All right. So, welcome again. Okay, before we dive in, let's talk about why performance reviews are even more important in a remote setting. Okay, some companies struggle with engagement, accountability, and transparency when there's no physical office. So, what are your thoughts on that, Kitty?
I'd say first that it is true because when I started freelancing, performance reviews are something that would be considered non-standard in a freelance setup. So when you're in a physical office, of course, feedback, happens naturally. Like you can see people working, you can have quick check-ins, you can sense when they're struggling. But in a remote setup, those moments don't really happen unless we're intentional. We're intentional about we build a structured process and we connect with our team members. So I think that's why structured performance reviews are really crucial. So I'd also say that the remote setup definitely changes the game when it comes to performance management. So as a big challenge is that traditional once a year reviews don't call it out anymore, sorry. Remote teams need consistent real-time feedback, to stay aligned and motivated. When people work independently, usually they need to know what's working, what's not, and definitely what success looks like. So it's all about keeping the communication loop open, whether it's through structured check-ins, goal setting, conversations, or quick feedback sessions.
Yes, thank you for. I totally agree that it's standard for a remote worker, for a remote team to have performance reviews in place. What can you share, Jo?
Yeah, for me, since we are in a remote setup, naturally, most of us are like lacking like the visibility. So sometimes there can be like an informal check-ins in terms of like setting up a meeting that doesn't really have like the structure of providing the actual feedback itself. And having like informal structure of like, check-ins could lead to being more of personalized, or it seems unplanned when it happens. So sometimes talents can be disconnected at some point in that kind of unstructured feedback. So I feel like one of the biggest challenges that could be covered in this discussion could be providing a more structured flow and letting people be aligned and engaged and supported through those kinds of check-ins and feedback loops.
Got it. Okay. So thank you for sharing that. Actually, a great performance review can really boost motivation, while a bad one can create disengagement. So let's break down some strategies on how to make sure performance reviews inspire growth. So let's start with the basics. What does a performance review look like in a remote setting? Kitty, you can start.
That's an interesting question. um, I think a great performance review doesn't feel like, a performance evaluation as itself. It feels like it should feel like a conversation about growth, because we always talk about this, JC, that no, we always have to have a growth mindset for our team members. So it should also be applied when we're doing performance review, because at the end of the day, our goal is not just to call out errors or call out mistakes, but to help them out. To help them figure out their areas for improvement and make a follow through, and will strive to make improvements for their own selves. So I think the best ones should be clear. It should be structured, and just like what Jo mentioned, it's two way. So it's just it's not just managers giving feedback. So team members should be able to, or should feel empowered, or should have the liberty to share their challenges and goals too, without the fear of retaliation. That's very important, because they tend to not say anything or to share their own feedback, because they feel like, hey, it's gonna be taken against me, or they wouldn't agree with me. So it pays that they know that it's safe space when you're doing your performance evaluation. I think one of my personal and go-to strategies is setting clear expectations from day one. People do their best work when they know exactly what success looks like or what's expected from them. So in our reviews, we don't just talk about past performance, we don't just call out mistakes or errors. We also align future goals, skills development, and ways to grow in their role.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Dishal?
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted I think Miss Kitty already mentioned a lot of things, but I just wanted to add that for a performance review to be more effective, especially on a virtual setup, it shouldn't be limited to once or twice a year, because I know in the corporate setup it can be like 6 months or 12-month evaluation. But in a remote setup, ongoing feedback loops and coaching sessions are very essential. And regular check-in really helps maintain the alignment, and also it could build trust within the team and allow for course correction before small issues become like big ones. And it's all about building a culture where the feedback is continuous and very supportive, and not really, very formal evaluation, since it's going to be a well-structured team. When there's a feedback loop and a performance review, that's not that formal in terms of the remote work.
So thank you guys for sharing that. I think what I got from you guys is to make sure that there's a clear expectations on the performance review, structured feedback, and a growth mindset. So taking into account that, the managers are also open to feedback of the team, and not just the manager giving feedback to a team member. All right. I want to get your insights on the common mistakes when conducting performance reviews remotely. I think briefly you've already tackled the what not to do, like what you've mentioned. So now I would like to discuss the common mistakes on, conducting virtual performance reviews. I think some of the things already you mentioned, like not being too formal on the approach, have it in a setup where, it's more on conversational set. But what else can you share? Like, for sure, if we need clear expectations, shouldn't be lack of structure. We want to ensure that, reviews doesn't feel random and rushed. But also, you mentioned focusing only on the negatives. We want to ensure that, they are empowered, like you mentioned, when we're conducting performance reviews. And of course, we want to have a growth plan for them, not just like the next steps and not no action points after a performance review. So can you share, like, do you have any experience in handling a performance review that one or two of these points were not effectively delivered?
I'll go first probably because I have a lot of experiences. So I worked in corporate companies and then transitioned to freelancing. So definitely I've had a share of good and bad experiences in terms of performance reviews, especially if I'm the receiving end. So let's say I'm the one who's being reviewed. If your manager is not really ready or not accustomed to providing or conducting performance reviews, that's one thing that I could say really affect or it really impact the overall experience or overall success of a performance review. So I guess apart from all of the things that we mentioned earlier is not being ready on both sides. Like your manager is not ready in providing feedback, not constructive, it's not nurturing, focusing on negatives, and also, there's no clear structure. So I think aside from that, what would be considered as some of the common mistakes would be like, yeah, focusing on the negatives. Because if people only hear criticisms or it's how you deliver your feedback to your team members or the person that you review it, having conversation with, they tend to like shut down. They don't tend to be, I mean, they feel disengaged, just like what Joe mentioned. They're not interested and they don't feel motivated towards the end of the performance review. So I think balance is the key. Recognition. I always see this during or hear this during my conversations with my previous managers that recognition fuels motivation and constructive feedback drives improvement. I hope that I mentioned that correctly. So, and of course, without a follow up plan, all the best efforts will go to waste. If we're serious about growth, and we need clear action points and consistent follow through. Otherwise, these feedback will just go down the drain, to be buried in day to day in our day to day hustle, especially that we're working in a very fast paced environment.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Tippy. Joe, I'm curious to know your own experience.
Yeah, based on my experience in the past, I think one of my managers was really on a rush in doing the performance review, and I felt like it wasn't really personal. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of the remote team or being in a remote setup, the structure of the check-ins feedback loops should be more of on a personal side rather than just the metrics hitting up the numbers. So when that happened to me, I felt like I was demotivated. I didn't feel like it was a priority to give me a feedback or to really support me and improve my performance. So that led me to like have like the motivation and not being able to really perform at my best because I didn't feel like the team or the manager that I had in the past was really there to support me. But one more thing that I wanted to add with that is that it's really important that your team members really feels like they are a priority and that you are there to really be a support to them in terms of the plans in their growth, since the performance review is really to help them grow in the company and in the career that they have chosen with your company. So it's really a good thing to really value or show how your teams or your team members are a value to the company you're working on. So yeah, that's based on my experience. And I hope that's something that won't be a mistake for other companies as well.
Yes, I totally agree. Like, I actually had, like, as a manager, I did a performance review because we have this structure on how to create a performance review. And I think one, as a manager's point of view, is that when you do the performance review, it's like a look back on how they started to where they are right now. Running a business can really be overwhelming at times, and you usually forget to, like a pat on the back on your team member because it happens on a daily basis. But having a performance review really is seeing how an individual grows within the company. And personally, it's overwhelming to, see an individual thrive in their position and how much, they've improved over the course of time. So I think like it's a win-win situation for both the team member and the management to really go through this performance review. It's like identifying, sometimes it takes two-person to identify what needs to be improved and what's working. So it's really not just for the team, but for the management as well. So, okay, thank you guys for sharing that. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us for today's Talent Talks episode. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe and share it with your team. Don't forget to check out www.morestaffing.co without M to learn more about hiring exceptional and trusted Filipino virtual talent.